One, two, three.
What's up, Jimmy? Norbert, how are you doing? You know that one of the things that I was trying to tell some of these people, once you vote, you're not allowed sunshine laws, you're not allowed to talk this and that, but it's like a jury. We had many years ago, 15 years ago, we had an attorney that brought that question up. And you take the discussion, forms that's on your agenda. Once you vote, you're like a jury. Once you walk out, the jury is either yay or nay or something else. Then you could sit afterwards and say, why did you talk? That's it. Because if the vote is done, so there's nothing you can do at that point. And one of the things I was saying is what I was trying to bring up. The guy from last week, Herman or whatever that. Yes, he owns 6 homes. One of the questions I want to bring up. He has 10 wife. No. Oh yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, but he has 3 homes on the water. Across the street, he bought 3 homes on the other side. He bought the neighborhood. Now, legally, he has 6 slips out in front. He leases that property or the house across the street to somebody. Now, since they're leasing, it may have a boat out on the front, but they're not on the water. No, there's no boat. Just the limit itself. Oh, I'm saying, he owns the neighborhood. Now, to me, that's like what you were saying. He's making a marina.
No, it's planning, it's the groundwork for selling the whole thing.
And he's in cahoots with the guy that has the castle or something over there, but they're all like almost in a row. But anyway, I said, I was looking at that. I went over and I said, man, look at the property before we voted.
I asked you that you want
Mike, good to meet you.
when you're talking about. So now,
I haven't actually checked.
What's the people that the Department of River itself,
Right here.
people when they're trying to get out, come and knock on one of the doors of the people that.
Yeah, I'd rather find out now than later.
It says Bahia Mar,
Yeah, that's probably
1940.
Those folks that are in that.
That's the one. Okay.
good deal.
All right. It's on the desktop for you, Richard.
That's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask me if something knows that or not, but.
Down on the bottom.
Because I met one time over in Cordova Road, it used to be like if you owned the property and in front of where the dock is, it used to be, they came up and they said, I don't have a boat, I don't want a boat and everything else. And the next door neighbor said, you mind if I take your dock? That used to be legal, it's not anymore. Only the homeowner that front of that piece of property can own it, like an Iowa or whatever. So, what I was saying is, this guy owns the street, and it's 3 homes on this side, 3 homes on the other side of the street. He rents them to people, leases them out. It's like a regular lease, people lease the home. Now, does that entitle them to a boat slip on the water side, or no? Because he's got 6 slips.
yeah, I would say no, unless the property was enjoyed, that was all one piece of property. That they had one thing.
Yeah,
If
what-
they're individual lots,
what
just
they
because
call-
the owner has it, it shouldn't matter.
See, I don't know whether he owns them all as a corporation.
Yeah, I think they're like a trust or something.
Well, he's got members.
His daughter bought those.
Mike owns the one on the corner. And see, they own these 3, but the other 3 they lease out.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No.
So Andrew, if we haven't actually started the meeting, how do we have a
Yes.
motion to be made before the meeting?
So both the chair and the vice chair are out this evening, so per Robert's rules, we will elect the chair pro tem. And all that's involved with that is a nomination for a board member and the associated seconded and consideration.
Okay.
So does anybody nominate another board member for chair pro tem?
Hi, Barry.
Barry nominates Jimmy. Do we have a second? Noel, second. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order, and if we could have a roll call?
Mr. Flanagan. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Robin Chiarelli. Absent. Mr. Dennison. Ms. Norvell.
Here.
Mr. Franks.
Here.
Mr. Boyer.
Here.
Mr. Knott.
Here.
Mr. Witten. Absent. And Mr. Morley. Absent. We have a quorum. Oh, and Mr. Harrison, you are the chair.
Okay. Next up is approval of the minutes, and actually I have a comment on one of the minutes. I think there's a
I got on the minutes on page 5.
All right.
Let me get to that. On page 5, the third paragraph where it says Chair Morley and stuff over there, down on the line where it says he felt they had been aware of the application before the board tonight, they would have similarly expressed operation. I think that should be opposition. Do you see where I'm talking about? Is that correct? It should be opposition rather than operation?
I'd have to listen to the whole thing.
You have the minutes?
Andrew's looking for it.
It's opposition.
Okay.
Okay.
Corrected to opposition. Okay. And also on page 6, Andrew, if you take a look at the second paragraph from the bottom, talking about Mr. Piotrowski, pointed out that he's a member of the association, the MISF. He's not. And I think that it was just a misunderstanding of the way that he was presenting himself. He's not a member.
This comes out.
He's not a member.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes with the amended items? Barry? Oh,
Second.
okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All opposed? Okay. Introduction to new members. We have Michael Boyer to start with. Michael, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the first meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for having me. My name is Michael Boyer. Can you hear me?
Oh, turn on the mic. Yeah, I got to push the button.
How about that?
The little light will go on.
Yeah, the light's on, but
There it
you
is.
got me? Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Boyer. I'm a South Florida resident. I've been in the marine insurance space for over 10 years. I run the marine division for Brown & Brown, a local firm here. And just looking to get more involved and help the board and help the folks here in Fort Lauderdale with some of these issues.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And Brewster? Brewster Knott.
That's me.
You could do the same.
Thank you guys for having me. My name is Brewster. I work for a company called Yacht Sales International right here on the New River. I've been in South Florida resident for about 8 years, multitude of positions throughout my whole career, including the Air Force. So I'm happy to be part of the city and hopefully make some great influential moves. So.
Okay. Thank you. welcome, both of you. And Sergeant, if we could have the crime and water report.
Hello. So for the months of July and August, the Fort Lauderdale Police Department Marine Unit responded to 270 calls for service. And among those calls for service were 5 boating accidents, no reported injuries. Unfortunately, one of them was Chair Morley's friend, and the unfortunate name of the boat was Blaze, so that's kind of unfortunate all the way around. Also, some of the call for service we had 3 boat burglaries, which is actually a little less than we normally have for 2 months. But during both burglaries, high-end fishing rods and reels were taken. All the boats were dusted for prints, and video in the area was asked for, and the detectives are following up with it. So far, they don't have any suspects just yet. Normally, that kind of thing, if they don't get any prints or video, then they'll keep their eye out in the pawn shops, someone trying to pawn the rods and reels. They also keep their eye out on OfferUp, Craigslist, that kind of thing, to see if something matches with that, and they can get in contact with the seller or the buyer and figure out where they came from, and if they are in fact the burglars. Also, we did have a death of a diver on August 20th. A 63-year-old man was diving. He was down for a couple of minutes, came back up, said he was having some issues, and they brought him on board. He immediately stopped breathing. We responded and conducted CPR on the gentleman. He wasn't responding to CPR. We transported him as quick as we could back to the 15th Street Fisheries and onto an ambulance, but he later passed at the hospital. The report doesn't say what the medical examiner's findings were. That isn't always included in the reports. Sometimes they'll block that information too. And also in the months of July and August, the Marine Unit wrote 170 boating citations. That's all.
Okay. Were the burglaries in a particular area?
I know one was on Rio Vista, 1350 Rio Vista, or 1305 Rio Vista Boulevard. And the other one was at 1725 Southeast 12th Street, so in the same area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions for the sergeant?
Yeah, well, they've been in for a few months, and they're both now solo officers, so they're out on their own on the boats right now, doing well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I hope so.
All right, Sergeant O'Neill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have a presentation by the city. Dr. Gassman.
Good evening, members of the Marine Advisory Board. My name is Dr. Nancy Gassman. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director in charge of sustainability for the City of Fort Lauderdale. You have before you today a proposed set of changes and amendments to the Unified Land Development portion of the code related to previously called or referred to as the Seawall Ordinance, and we are proposing some additional changes to that ordinance. So the existing seawall ordinance was modified in 2016. It set a minimum seawall elevation at 3.9 feet. It recommended that the design of the seawall be supported of a future height adjustment up to 5 feet NAVD 88. It allowed for a maximum height of a seawall and a dock based on the property's base flood elevation. And some of the key provisions within that seawall ordinance were that you would have to fully reconstruct your seawall to meet the new requirements if you met the substantial repair threshold. It would require maintaining your seawall in good repair, especially not only for protection of your seawall, but of your neighbor's seawall. and it required owners to prevent tidal waters from entering other people's properties or the right-of-way. And should they be cited, it would set a timeline of 365 days for remedy, which were the key provisions of that ordinance at that time. Since then, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was engaged by Broward County to do a flood risk management assessment. This they did in 2018, and the outcome of that assessment was a Broward County-wide tidal barrier standard. It is the intent of Broward County, as incorporated into their comprehensive plan, that all seawalls moving forward, all new seawalls moving forward, or those that are related to substantial improvement, meet a minimum seawall top elevation of 5 feet by the year 2050. And as part of that policy in the comp plan, the city is compelled to provide for a regionally consistent ordinance. And so the ordinance that is brought before you today allows the city to come into compliance with the requirement of the Broward County Land Use Code. To give you an idea what that elevation standard looks like, this is the Isle of Palm. The previous seawall was in the range of 1 to 1.2 feet. And the city's standard for all seawall projects is already 5 feet. And so you see what 5 feet looks like by comparing the before construction and after construction. The 5 feet elevation in part is based on the Unified Sea Level Rise projection that is developed by the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact. They provide technical tools to municipalities in this area to help them understand how to adjust and address climate change. If you look at the box that is surrounded there around the year 2070, the expectation is that sea level will be in the range of 2.5 to 4.6 feet of elevation by the year 2070. And as such, this particular elevation for seawalls will be very protective of both the upland property and the right-of-ways behind those properties. So what are the key modifications in this ordinance? The original seawall ordinance was contained in 19.3, this boat slips portion of the ULDR. In order to make the adjustment to create a tidal barrier standard, we essentially have modified the definition of mooring device and mooring structures in 19.3. All the language associated with the seawall elevation requirements were removed from this section, and we have changed the allowance for dock elevation from 10 inches to 12 inches above the associated tidal barrier or shoreline structure. A new section has been created, which is 19.13, which defines the resiliency standards for tidal flood protection. So the first thing it does is it establishes terms, phrases, words for definition, and interpretation of the section. It extends the elevation requirements to not only seawalls, but to any type of tidal flood barrier. It changes the requirement from 3.9 feet top elevation to a minimum elevation of 5 feet of elevation. It allows for structures permitted before January of 2035 to be built at a 4-foot elevation, but only if it is designed so that a cap can be added to it to bring it up to 5 feet of elevation by the year 2050. And again, it establishes a maximum elevation for tidal barriers to ensure that those tidal barriers do not create a situation where flooding from the sky enters the house. So the minimum elevation is really designed to prevent flooding from the sea from entering the property. The maximum elevation is designed to prevent flooding, water from the sky from inundating the house. Additionally, the requirements of tidal structures built where there was no structure before now must provide habitat enhancement at the waterward face. So riprap or some other type of habitat. There's an encouragement as part of the Broward County Model Code to incorporate living shorelines wherever possible. The city of Fort Lauderdale specifically provides for a waiver from that top elevation requirement for waterfront homes that have a lower finished floor elevation. And it also requires, again, per the county's model ordinance, that there's a disclosure at the time of sale that the house has a title barrier and that these requirements are in place. And this is that requirement to basically let the new homeowner know that there is a minimum requirement for the seawall. What has not changed is that should your seawall get sited or need substantial repair, that you have to put in a new seawall at the new elevation, and you have 365 days or 1 year to remedy if you are sited. And it continues to provide guidance for both a minimum and maximum elevation. The ordinance, as you have it in front of you, was provided to Broward County. They requested some additional language associated with the waiver language. That language has been added in the document in front of you to set a definite time frame for the length of time that that waiver is appropriate. And they have found that we are substantially consistent with their policy that mandates that we adopt these regional consistent standards. The next steps for this ordinance is there's a presentation scheduled for the Planning and Zoning Board later in September. The Council of Civic Associations who've been provided this presentation previously asked for a renewed look at what the current proposed ordinance looks like. We hope to bring it to first reading in front of the City Commission probably in the November timeframe, with a second reading probably in the December timeframe, at which point, upon approval, it will go into implementation within 10 days of approval. I'm here before you to request a recommendation, but a recommendation by the board is not required or compelled. And with that, I will end my presentation.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Gass?
I have a question. I'd just like to confirm that unless...
Sir, if you could just pull your mic closer to you.
Sorry, I'm having
Thank you.
microphone issues today, apparently. Unless there is a damage to the seawall that is over 50%, there is no requirement of the homeowner to make any adjustments up until then. Is that correct?
Right. If they are coming in for a permit for repair, as long as it's not up to 50%, as long as it's below 50% of the totality of the structure, they can repair it without having to elevate it.
Okay, I had a couple questions. One is, from the very beginning, I was a little confused on the maximum height concept. And you're saying it's to stop the rain from flooding. But so there can be uneven seawalls at different maximum heights depending on what the elevation of the foundation of the house is? Mm-hmm. So if you had a house that was 6 feet up, you could have a giant seawall if you want? Or?
So you can't have a giant seawall because, again, there's a minimum and a maximum. And part of the idea of having a maximum, which in the past there wasn't a maximum in place, is to prevent creating canyons in our canal systems and to prevent creating visual blockage of views by the neighboring property. So that's the intent, part of the intent of having a maximum. The other part is to, again, not allow for a maximum that would end up creating a problem for the existing property in terms of stormwater runoff.
So what is the ratio between the elevation of the foundation and the maximum for the seawall? Is it even or?
Great question. I wasn't prepared for that one.
Okay. Because that is what the formula would be, I assume.
I believe the maximum as it's written here is the base flood elevation of the property.
The base flood, okay.
Right, so it's not the finished floor elevation, it's the base flood.
Base flood, okay. Another thing is on the fixed docks to extend 10 inches, you said also 10 or 12, it's gone to 12 inches now?
It's going to 12 inches.
And so that means that the dock, if you had a wooden dock, it could be 12 inches higher than the seawall?
Than the top elevation of the seawall, correct.
Okay. Is that an issue that comes up much, or?
It does come up, partially because when integrated docks are being built out of concrete, the additional concrete on top of the base elevation of the seawall, we don't want that to be so high that, again, it creates an issue with how water moves on and off the property. When the original 10 inches was incorporated into the 2016 ordinance, it was related to the height of a joist. So when you're laying a wooden dock over an existing seawall, the joist plus the width of the planking would be less than 10 inches, and that was the intent. Because the original way that particular 2016 amendment was written was that the dock couldn't exceed the height of the seawall itself. And so a provision was made to allow for wooden planking to be placed over the top of it.
Perfect. Now I understand. Thank you. The other thing, and I remember this from when this first happened a few years ago, was the 365 days. Is that, I know that that's about how long it takes to get from getting a contract to actually getting them to come out and do it. Could there be some provision, or have you thought through something of, to at least have, instead of it just to have the repairs completed, to have something on your contract? Is there any consideration for what if that time goes even longer?
Yeah, so we've had a number of years to see how the ordinance works. When Broward County was developing their model ordinance, they used a lot of our language. And the 365 days is one of those things that we heard was problematic, but that's what Broward County incorporated into their model ordinance, so we can't vary from that. The way that we have worked with it in practice is that as long as substantial progress is being made toward installing a new seawall, that there are time extensions granted in order to be able to actually do the construction. Because I totally agree with you, between getting materials, contractors, permits, it can be a very tight squeeze to get that done. But in practice, the way that the city has worked with it is as long as you are making reasonable progress, that they are willing to work closely with the homeowner to make sure that they can comply with the request.
Okay. Good, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for coming tonight, and thank you for sending me some information to read about sea level rise and get a better understanding. Fortunately, I had a good conversation with Jennifer Gerardo a couple of years ago about all this, and explained it very well. If you have a high tide event, but you also have a lot of rain out west, where does the water go? And that's one of the biggest causes for flooding. I think, Andrew, where you live in Cooper City, you get flooding out there sometimes, even though you're not near the river or anything. So there's a complicated situation. What do we do? One of which, of course, is building seawalls. I've got a couple of questions about that. The first thing is, my concern, I'll have waterfront property. I'm probably not going to be around when I have to build a seawall, so personally it's not going to affect me, but it will affect other people. That's going to be pretty expensive, and I know one response to that is, well, if the homeowner has a seawall, the insurance goes down or helps protect other properties, which is what we all need to do. My question is the cost to homeowners to build that seawall, and if I have a neighbor who's benefiting from me building a seawall, is there some compensation or some way that, like say you mentioned, the right-of-way behind the properties needs to be protected. Well, if the right-of-way is owned by the city or like other properties, is there any consideration helping out the homeowners for the cost because it does protect their other properties?
Yeah, that issue came up in 2016, and it has been a constant request, there are no funds available to help a homeowner raise their seawall. The easiest way to think about this in terms of an equity standpoint is that your seawall is really no different than a fence, and that it is part of how you're protecting the perimeter of your property. And as such, it is exclusively your responsibility. When a property is not managed in a way that is consistent with city code, the city cites it. And part of that is to prevent a nuisance situation from being created in the community. And so seawalls are looked at very much like fences or degrading roofs or any other aspect of a private property. It is the property owner's responsibility to maintain it in good condition.
Okay, good. Let's see, I had one other question here about sea level rise. I did a lot of reading last night. And it's amazing because you've got all these projections, high, some not so high. You've got people on every side in which direction about sea level rise. You know, one of the factors in looking at sea level rise was looking at the Key West, I think, tide marker, as well as a lot of other things. But throwing in some projections on thermal expansion, slowing down of the Gulf Stream, higher rainfall, heat. I mean, there's all kind of factors. But it all comes down to being a projection.
Correct.
All right, so I believe there was something I read in there that every 5 years, I believe this group looks at the actual rise and then can make adjustments. Okay, well, I just, from my perspective, as long as there's a way to say, this is our projection, but here, this is what we found as the reality, and let's base what we're doing on the reality, not these projections. I mean, however that can be done, I think it's important to look at the reality versus projections.
Right, so the projections, the commitment by the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact is to update their projections every 4 years. And what they have done in the past is to bring together local, academic, and regulatory experts that can look at what the projections are out in the world right now and judge the science to determine which ones are most applicable to the South Florida area. And so this isn't a group of people that come into a room and draw a line. They are going to the most recent scientific literature to support it. To your point about you'd rather see it reflected in reality, in the last 3 years, the highest high tide we've experienced is 2.65 feet. And there are lots and lots of seawalls out there that are built currently to less than 2. So even if we can, I don't think there's any question that we are seeing that the sea level is continuing to rise, and whether you believe it's going to be linear or it's going to accelerate, at this point, we're building a piece of infrastructure that's intended to have a useful life of 30 to 50 years. And so even if we're looking at the reality of a 2.56 foot tide on an annual basis, that's reason enough to be able to compel our neighbors to build all new seawalls to a much higher standard.
Okay, good. Thank you on that. And well, just one question for Andrew. What's the city going to do about its seawalls? What's the plan?
So not a question for Andrew. He looked right up at me.
I'm sorry. Well, there you go.
So currently, in 2017, the city developed a seawall master plan. Of the 165 miles of waterway, considering that there are 2 banks for every waterway, the city owns about 5 miles of seawall, which is a very, very small portion of the total seawall in the city. To date, we've done over half a mile of improvements. Cordova Road was nearly half a mile. Isle of Palm was a substantial one. Just yesterday, we had the groundbreaking for Hendricks Isle, where we're putting another 320 linear feet in. And we are entering into a contract, or just entered into a contract, to do 4 of the seawalls along Las Olas and the seawall along Southeast 10th Avenue. So based on the seawall master plan, we are following the recommendations of that plan and prioritizing the seawalls on an annual basis to continue to improve our seawalls and protect the roadways that are next to them by providing not only an erosion prevention device, but also a true tidal barrier.
Very good, thank you.
Are there any other questions for her? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Dr. Gassman, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming here and everything else in this presentation. I said it's a great presentation. What you guys did over there in Cordova Road, as I was saying, with the putting the sheet pile down, I said you solved two problems at the same time, as far as I can see. We had a lot of homeowners come in here and are now putting their docks back in that area. And I was inquiring to most of them is whether or not we had the reverse effect. In other words, was the water coming up behind the seawall, which it was doing no matter what height you had. So you seem to solve that problem by putting the sheet pile all the way down close to or at the bedrock, which stops any of the lime rock from the porous lime rock from coming up on the other side. It seemed to solve that problem. And I would like to see you make a standard for that, so when you do something like the north side of the New River on that seawall, that you use the same kind of seawall and do away with the panel walls. Panel walls, I think, are the problems, because if you put the panel walls in there, the porous lime rock comes up on the other side, and it's a problem. So if you kind of make a standard, what I was saying is the sheet pile seems to be the way to go, and it seems to solve the two problems. One with the water, the height on the outside, and also back on the inside.
Yeah, so the city's engineering standard for all new seawalls is a sheet pile seawall driven to an appropriate depth and then putting on a concrete top at an elevation of 5 feet. So we can't do that everywhere, but to the extent that we are able, that is the standard that we are moving forward with for all city-owned seawalls.
I think it's a good idea. Another thing is, one of the things that I wish that our commission would do is, first of all, require seawalls in the city of Fort Lauderdale. A lot of people don't realize, but a seawall is not required. There's a lot of areas, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's quite a few areas in where it's a natural berm. In Fort Lauderdale, there is no seawall, so I don't know how you would maintain or keep one up to standard and stuff if it's not required in the first place. So I think the city needs, first of all, say that everyone needs to have a seawall, or all the properties need to have a seawall.
Yeah, I think part of the intent of this ordinance is to say that a seawall is not the only solution, and that you can achieve protection of the community using a tidal barrier, which could be a number of other things. So as long as you're not flooding your neighbor's property and you're not flooding the public right-of-way, you have more options than just a seawall to move forward. I think one of the other challenges specifically for the city of Fort Lauderdale is because we have properties, waterfront properties that are tidally influenced 5 miles or more from the ocean, that the tidal impacts farther inland are not as severe at this time as those that are nearer to the coastal zone. And because of that, there are plenty of properties that may not have a seawall, but they're also not experiencing any of the tidal flooding that's associated with the rising of the seas at this time. And this ordinance is written in a way that allows rising seas to dictate where this ordinance must be enforced. And I think that's a very important part of the ordinance, because you don't want to make someone make an investment unnecessarily. And I think that this ordinance allows for both the flexibility and the time frame to have to put in a seawall or other appropriate barrier when the time is right.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, we will move on to,
Is there any interest in the board making a recommendation to support this moving forward?
forgot about that. Would anyone like to make a motion to make a recommendation?
Yeah, I recommend to approve.
I'll second.
Yeah.
So we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Yeah, a motion to approve this ordinance.
The presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Andrew, question?
The only recommendation I would make is it would be better if it was a motion of support as opposed to approval,
Motion of
because we're
support.
not actually approving it.
I'd make a motion to support.
Second.
And you'll second the motion?
Second.
Okay, switch it around. Do we need a voice vote or roll call, just a voice vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to item 7, dock waiver, and I think we have the applicant, Richard Pesey, in the house. Okay.
Hi, thank you. My name's Richard Pesey. Just a quick presentation here. I put it, yes, I put the presentation up. It's a PowerPoint.
So he just wants to share his screen. I don't know how to do that.
I pressed share slide. Does he want the? You go. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So just a quick history. We have we upgraded our dock in 2019. Completed our inspection in 2020. We had one of our local neighbors at 1207 Seminole had proposed a very large pier, which a lot of the neighbors opposed and that kind of thing. We came to the board. Board had agreed that 48 feet 8 inches was fair and reasonable. So we would like to submit our application to do the same, to accommodate a larger boat for myself. Currently, I had a 45-foot azimuth, which was too large for the pilings that were really there, based not enough purchase of the. They weren't far enough out, basically. So we'd like to go to a 48-foot 8 inches, and available to answer any questions.
So to the board, does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Go through, yes, Barry.
Yes, I noticed all residential properties within 300 feet, totaling 18 residences.
Do you have any other letters of support?
No, I didn't pursue them, no.
Okay, because we did get one letter opposed.
Yeah, I saw that. They mentioned a Nextdoor. I don't have a Nextdoor account, but that could be explained by, we do get inquiries a lot of time, people saying they have boats to bring to us, but we don't actually have a Nextdoor account, so I'm not sure where that comes from.
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm looking on Google Earth here. Do you have a big sailboat back there, a big catamaran?
Oh, that used to be back there. There's, I can't really show my screen, but are you talking about across the way or in our property?
Oh, no, I've got one here on your property on Google Earth.
Yeah, in Google Earth, that's from before we upgraded our dock.
Uh-huh.
If you go to some of the next slides, let's see, slide two, let me see here. Yeah, if you go to some of the photos, you'll see the new dock that was finished in 2020 that has you'll see like a Proline boat, White House, 3 triple cluster pilings at 20 feet. And we would basically just be having the exact same, but just at 48. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, looks like to me there's plenty of room to maneuver and it's not interfering with anybody else. Any complaints or anything negative from neighbors about it?
No, I had just the one note about next door, but like I said, I don't have a next door account, so
Yeah,
yeah, I'll look into that.
looks good. Thank you.
Is the purpose do you have larger boats yourself that you're going to be
Yeah.
putting there?
Yeah, I want to get a 55 Power Cat, which is quite a heavy boat. So I would be putting another set of triple cluster pilings in the same locations that you see in the photos. That would support that nicely and keep it away from the seawall and even in heavy weather.
And also, did the neighbor to the east of you that was in the corner who had come before us before, did they build their dock and are they keeping larger boats there? No?
Immediately to the east of us?
No, the second one over.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was your question? Are they?
That they came to us a while back to put in longer boats or to put in
Oh,
bigger
yeah,
boats there.
that's, yeah, to the east of, I'm sorry, I was thinking to the west. Yeah, to the east. Yeah, Mr. Schaefer, we actually became great friends over this, and yeah, he's put in his dock, and it's all good, yeah.
Okay,
He did finish it, though, yeah.
And so the neighbor to the immediate east of you, the next door neighbor on that side, would they be pinched at all by having bigger boats right next to them and then
No.
bigger boats on the other side?
No, we have a boat next to them now they're fine. It's been like that for 6 years.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone on the board? Anyone in the public that has any questions? Mr. Chappelle?
Tyler Chappelle, Chappelle Group, 714 East McNabb. Just wanted to make the statement that Mr. Schaefer was the applicant we had come before you before for the location at 1207 Seminole. And the applicant that's before you tonight is the one who made the positions of what you're asking. So we're glad to see that the neighbors have worked their differences through the process, and we would obviously support this application.
Thank you, Tyler. Anyone else in the public? Close it to the public. Is there any other board discussion?
What's the beam of the new?
The beam of the which, sorry? Of the new boat? Yeah, it'd be a lot wider. It'd be about 16, 18. The 75 feet across the whole.
Between pilots now and
I'd have to refer back to the survey, which is there. I have the whole survey submitted. I don't know, they're right at the property line. So does that help? Because it's 75 feet across. So the pilings are at 75. They'd be exactly at the same width. They would just be at 48 feet, 8 inches.
Yes, there's like 35 feet on each side.
With a 10-foot setback.
10-foot
in the
setback,
RS 4.4.
25, yeah.
What length of the boat is going in there? What's
55.
the length of the boat?
About 55, yeah.
55?
Yeah.
Do you have a boat in there now?
I don't have it yet. It's not. If
Oh, you don't have it yet?
No,
But it's going to be a 55-foot boat?
that's what I want to get, yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay. Any other discussion from the board? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Okay, second? Mr. Flanagan? Roll call vote?
Mr. Flanagan. Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Dennison.
Yes.
Ms. Norvell.
Yes.
Mr. Franks.
Yes.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
And Mr. Knott.
Yes.
Unanimous. Motion carries.
Passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Our item number 8 has been tabled. So we'll go right to item number 9,
Franks.
dock waiver on Hendricks Isle. Okay, thank you. Jenna, you're going to present for us? Okay.
All right, good evening, board. My name is Jenna Robbins. I'm with the Chappelle Group. Thank you for this opportunity to present this application for a dock waiver on behalf of Hendricks Group LLC. The application is for 10 Hendricks Isle, which is located just north of East Las Olas Boulevard, and it's to the west of the Intercoastal Waterway Channel. And the property is located along the Rio Grande Waterway. The current property has about 14 existing slips that are perpendicular to the shoreline, which is similar in nature to other properties within this neighborhood. And here are just some aerials to give you a visual depiction of the property. These were from Property Appraiser. This is from the south, facing north. And this is from the eastern side of the property, facing west. And then here's just a zoomed out aerial showing that the majority of the properties within this area utilize perpendicular mooring. Here's our plan set, this with the survey showing the existing conditions. There's a 250 linear foot seawall along the entire length of the property with a wood marginal dock and 8 wood finger piers to accommodate those 14 slips. The proposed project consists of the removal of those wood docks, the installation of a new seawall, 250 linear feet in front of the old seawall, and the installation of 8 concrete finger piers that are 20 feet in length and 4 feet wide. And then the installation of 30 mooring piles, 15 which are directly at the end of the finger piers, and then 15 that are about another 10.5 feet waterward. And this is just a cross-sectional view with the existing conditions on top, showing the coral rock wall with the existing wood dock. This wood dock will be removed, and then on the bottom of the screen is the proposed conditions, showing the new seawall in front, the 20-foot long finger pier, 1 mooring pile directly adjacent to the finger pier, and then 1 about 10 feet further waterward. These are the same plans overlaid on top of an aerial to get a better view of how this lays out compared to the neighboring properties. So the existing wood marginal dock that will be removed is shown in orange. There are 14 slips. The vessels vary in length from about 40 feet to 59 feet in length. And if you take into consideration the width of the marginal dock, that's about 5 to 8 feet, then these vessels extend about 48 to 64 feet into the waterway. The Rio Grande waterway is about 160 feet wide, and with our proposed finger piers and mooring piles to accommodate 14 slips that are 45 feet in length, this is a reduction in the slip length, so these slips are reduced about 30%, and they will not exceed 30% the width of the waterway. And so we're requesting a waiver for 15 out of the 30 mooring piles that extend approximately 35 feet from the property line, as opposed to the 25 feet from the property line per the city code. And then here's another just zoomed out aerial showing that these slips will be reduced in length compared to the existing slips, as well as the other slips along the Rio Grande waterway. And since the city code regulates that vessels cannot extend 30% the width of the waterway on either side, that leaves about a 40% width in the center of the channel, which is for navigation. So that 40% navigational channel is shown in blue, and that's about 64 feet wide. And so these 14 slips that are about 45 feet in length will not extend within this navigational channel. So overall, for the 15 most waterward mooring piles, we're requesting a waiver as they will extend approximately 35 feet from the property line. And these structures are necessary to safely moor these 14 slips or 14 vessels, especially during high wind events, severe weather, when there's excessive wakes from other boaters along the Rio Grande waterway. And then this proposed project is similar to other resolutions that have been granted in this neighborhood. For example, mooring piles at 141 Isle of Venice received a waiver to extend 35 feet from the property lines, same as what we're requesting. 95 Hendricks Isle received a waiver for one mooring pile to extend 35 feet. And then 91 Hendricks Isle also received a waiver for 3 mooring piles for the same distance at 35 feet. Then here's just an exhibit showing the existing waivers in the vicinity. They range from about 35 feet to 80 feet from the property line. And so we're just requesting a waiver for 35 feet, which is similar in nature to those that have been previously granted along the Rio Grande waterway. And then, to our knowledge, we have not received any objection or opposition letters. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, you're putting in another seawall also?
Correct.
What is that extra pile at the end of the dock for?
That's another mooring pile. So there's 15 along the ends of the finger piers, and then another one about 10 feet out.
And you're raising the seawall to the new height, to another height? I see you added what?
Yes, to 5 feet.
Up to the 5 feet NGA.
Correct.
What size boat is going to be in there, the longest boat?
45 feet.
Huh?
45.
45?
Yes.
The way I was looking at it, the most you could put in there would be 48, correct?
Yes.
So we would have a restriction of, actually 45 would be almost the maximum you can put in there, otherwise you're exceeding the 30% rule?
Correct.
Anyone else? Harry?
I'm not sure if there's an association. It's for a 16-unit condominium, and they received site plan approval through resolution 22-07. I'm sorry?
So are there?
One property owner, and there's going to be 16 units.
Okay. So 16 units.
14 slips.
Is there any language that would restrict them for putting longer than a 45-foot boat other than the requirement in?
That'll be up to the HOA. I'm assuming that would be up to the HOA. But according to the resolution and the environmental permits that we'll have to obtain, they wouldn't be able to extend further anyway.
This is an existing property?
Correct. But they are redeveloping it. They just got site plan approval.
Okay, that's where I'm coming off. The pictures are all showing. I was wondering how Tyler got to get 8 people to agree on any one thing. So it's under total redevelopment.
Yes.
That's what the P&Z stuff is in here from.
Yes.
From P&Z. All right.
Will the slips be owned by the condo owners?
It's a good question. Yes.
Yeah, I just got one comment. On that same canal, about a block down, there's a 38-footer that I run periodically. And the biggest concern the owner of the boat has is storm events. And you look down that canal, there's a lot of absentee owners. And when a storm comes, they're not around to tie them down. Anything you can do with pilings or whatever to secure the boats, I think is a real positive thing. But that's one of the biggest concerns from a homeowner, a boat owner on that particular canal. So if you can make a stronger moorings for those boats, that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Any questions from the public? Open to the public? No? Okay, we'll close it to the public, back to the board. And we'll thank the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you. And any further discussion? And if not, do we have a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve it.
Motion made.
Second? I'll second it.
And we have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Flanagan.
Approve.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Approved.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Dennison.
Yes.
Ms. Norvell. Yes. Mr. Franks.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
And Mr. Knott.
Yes.
We have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, board.
Okay. Moving on, our next item is item 10 from Ron Bahia-Mar, proposal to operate a floating business. And we have Mr. Lockery.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Robert Locker on behalf of the applicant. I'll jump right in. The item before you tonight is something that I know you all don't see that often. It's been a number of years, and that is for a floating business or the use of a vessel as a business. That decision is ultimately made by the City Commission, but a prerequisite of that is, of course, coming before you, showing it to you, and a recommendation to the City Commission. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation here, if I can find it. There it is. Can I come up? All right. I know that folks are probably familiar generally with the BMR project. I don't know if you can see that yet on your screen. Come up in just a second. There we go. But as a portion of that project is previously approved, and actually the portion that's already under construction, a marine village is located at the southeast side of the site, or southeast end of the site, which this next graphic you'll see, whoops, one too far, which is located at the bottom left side of this drawing, and this is the approved site plan. The Marine Village area is an area which includes kiosks for food and beverage, for retail sales, It creates a large promenade along A1A and also facing the waterway. It was perhaps one of the areas that was most exciting about the project. And as I said, it is the area that has already begun construction. As a portion of that, which you can't see here, as I said, there's a number of kiosks along that waterway. The public will be invited, as well as guests of Bahia Mar. What's currently a surface parking lot will be reincorporated into an area where the public can enjoy it. As part of that, as you see here, this is a view looking to the south along that promenade. There'll be a large landscape buffer between A1A and the pedestrian pathway. The sidewalk will actually now come onto this site, be much wider, of course, than the existing sidewalk that you see along A1A, with these kiosks that face both to the east towards the beach, but also to the west across the marina. The proposal that's before you tonight is not this portion of the project, that's already included, is already approved, but rather the inclusion of the former car ferry and pedestrian ferry that existed at Fisher Island. This vessel has been retired. It is currently undergoing a renovation, remodeling, electrical, mechanical, all the systems will be upgraded and incorporated into the Marine Village as an additional amenity, both for Bahia Mar and for the public who comes to the site. And that amenity will provide additional seating and additional areas for the public when they're at for instance, if you get something to eat at one of the kiosks, you can go onto the vessel and enjoy it while looking out, of course, both across towards the beach and also towards the marina. This is the vessel as it sits today, and this is the proposed renovations. This is a rendering of how it will look in place. Now, what you don't see here are the kiosks on the left side, but you can envision those. This will bring the public not only along that promenade, will also bring them into the west side of the promenade along the marina where they can enjoy the marina from this location. The vessel itself will be located outside of any navigable waterway. It's all within the marina itself. It doesn't impact in any way the channel, which is to the south, or of course it's a long way from the intercoastal, as you saw. There will be 2 levels that the public can enjoy. Again, mostly seating. This is on the bottom level, and then you look up to the top level. Here's an area of how that looks, again, with views across the marina as well as back towards the beach. This is a view kind of from a higher view looking down on the vessel itself, and then some other views as you're sitting or within the vessel itself, and as it will be perceived. Hard to see here, but the vessel is located again. I'll go back to this earlier slide that shows where it's going to be located on the site. Again, right here, so well off the channel, which is of course on the south side and a long way from the intercoastal. And again, the thought is that this should provide a really nice amenity for the public and to the marina. With that said, we'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you may have. We have joining us our consulting planner, Greg Bruton, our environmental engineer, Tyler Chappell, as well as Alex, who is working with the naval architect right now on the designs and the modifications to the vessel. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on the board? Yes, Norbert.
Oh, a question. How are you connecting up to the wastewater?
So there will be a hard connection from the vessel itself to the sewer lines which run along that area of the Marine Village.
So it's actually, you're not using a holding tank or anything else, you're connecting to shore, correct?
I believe there will be a holding tank, there will be holding tanks in the vessel itself, but it will be connected directly to shore. It won't be pumping out in the traditional way a vessel would do it.
Well, that's what I was saying. In other words, this would be a regular, just like as though you were structural on land.
That's correct.
It's not going through a waterborne head?
Yes, that's correct, and we'll be meeting all local codes and ordinances as well as Coast Guard requirements.
I have a question on is there a plan for maintenance as far as on pulling the boat out periodically and just making sure it doesn't sink?
Yeah, absolutely.
Through?
And that's something that the consultants and the naval architects are working on. Certainly when the vessel comes in, it will still be regulated by the Coast Guard. Those requirements are there. Over time, it may be decommissioned and would take on a different type of responsibility as how it would be maintained.
Where's the work being done now? Or what boatyard, or where's it at?
It's in Palaca, Florida.
Palaca. Is there for maintenance, is there a yard in town that could actually haul the boat? Because it's a big, large, wide boat.
We don't have one specifically identified, but I'm hearing there's a number of them that would service this, including in Miami as well as in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, yeah, because having owned barges that have sunk before, I know they do sink. So it is something that needs to be
Have to
planned
stay on top of, certainly.
for it. And not that it would be a danger to anyone on the boat, but that it would be a hazard as far as being in the water. Okay. And I was going to ask about the restrooms and sewage also, because I didn't see them in the drawing. But will there be restrooms on
And there
board?
are restrooms, of course, located on the landward side too. The new ticket offices and offices for the Jungle Queen, which are on the south end of the site, they have full bathrooms there as well as the ones that will be on this vessel.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, no, go ahead.
What are your intentions on, are you going to leave the vessel there in the event of a storm, or are you plan on hauling it or moving it?
I don't know the answer to that. I presume it would probably stay. It would be secured on site there.
Yes.
Yeah. 1970, I came down here as on spring break and went by BMR and went by that area. It was Charter Boat Row. I think that's pretty cool. Years later, I found myself being a captain on Charter Boat Row. I've taken thousands of people out on dive trips, snorkel trips, private boats, things like that. We've got a history of having charter boats at that location. We've got the Jungle Queen has been in business for something like 80 years. And now they're, I think, 3 docks over. The charter boats who were on Charter Boat Row, I think, were given 1 week to move to the north side. Disrupted their business a little bit. I saw on your graphic here, you're going to fancify that northern side. What's going to happen to the charter boats?
So right now, the charter boats have been moved to the north side, obviously, while the south side is under construction. The Jungle Queen, which you mentioned, as we all know, there's kind of a shack there right now. Included within this plans is a new ticket office and a new home. Obviously, their home's out west, too, off Riverland Road. But the facility that will be here will be significantly upgraded, and the Jungle Queen will still come here. The slips are still there. But yes, the charter activity will be relocated to the north side of the site.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I just got a concern. I know that over time, things change. Bahia Cabana was a great place. It's no longer there. BMR has got to change. It still needs to have that character, from the history of Fort Lauderdale. I think you're having something about, what's the famous writer who had a dock space there or something?
McGee.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
that's right.
And that's, I've heard about it stories a long time ago. So there's some character we want to keep, but the main thing I see is the charter boat fleet is having a rough place of where they dock, where they go. And if we can just make sure we give them consideration, they're part of the city, part of the history of the city. They provide a lot of entertainment. They take people offshore and, show guests to Fort Lauderdale, the ocean. And we don't want to lose that. So whatever we can do to maintain their presence is super important.
Completely understood, and it's obviously a great amenity for the resort itself, so we agree with you. I will say, because you brought up specifically, Travis McGee was slip F-18, and this slip where the ferry's going to be, the former ferry that served Fisher Islands being relocated up here, it will be renamed slip F-18 in honor of that fictional character.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? From the applicant? Is there anyone from the public that has any questions or comments? Okay, back to the board. Any discussion? Any?
Do we have to approve anything? We do have to approve?
Per 8146, the recommendation of the Marine Advisory Board is required for this to move on.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve it.
Mr. Flanagan, second?
Does this need does this need any kind of recommendation or anything else?
It needs you to second it.
Second?
So that's a second?
Yeah, I made the motion, yeah. Made the motion to approve it. He seconded
All right, so we have a second. Yes? Okay.
All right.
Roll call or voice, or I guess a roll call vote?
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes, approved.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Approved.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Dennison. Yes. Ms. Norvell.
Yes.
Mr. Franks.
Yes.
Mr. Boyer.
Approve.
Mr. Knott.
Yes.
Unanimous.
It passes. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to old new business. Do we have anything? Barry, yes?
Andrew, I'm going to,
Yeah, we're gonna use. Forward it.
you want to take these?
Just tell me when you. You want them in this order?
Yeah, that's going to be the first one.
But do you want the picture or do you want the cover sheet?
No,
Just a picture.
here's the picture.
Or do you want the picture?
Yeah, that, yeah. I'll make this brief. We have a lot of board members that probably aren't aware, but several years ago, the board discussed the use of city facilities by a few charter companies to pick up and drop off customers. The lack of enforcement was attributed to the lack of staff. Now it's totally out of control, especially on the weekends. The city condemned the entire dock at Riverfront, yet it is now used repeatedly to drop off or pick up paying passengers to charter or cruise. The use of our floating docks for commercial use or boats exceeding the approved length is a violation of the county's grant program that they were built with. It could impact future grants. City has left itself wide open by choosing to look the other way and not being additionally named on insurance policies. The city could implement a boarding fee, require proper insurance, monitor the activities, and receive a revenue of approximately $300,000 to $400,000 a year. This issue has reached the point that it should be brought to the attention of the city manager for his review and direction should the board so decide. These photographs we're going to display will further illustrate this point. And I would hope that we could agenda this in a future meeting and have it discussed again. Looking at these pictures, the first one, the 2-hour charter, has a Coast Guard license, but they were using George English Park. They were removed from there, and they're now using the end of Seville Street. My able-bodied assistant here is having a little trouble. Number 2, where to meet, plus or minus 35 people at Esplanade Park. Also, this operator uses the address of Esplanade Park on his business. You get it? Well, that's not the one, but that's okay. Private groups, that charter, using George English Park also. They've since discontinued it. The city has stopped any of them from going into George English. Number 4, there's 2 large party boats at the condemned dock in front of Riverfront, or the wharf. Number 5, the pontoon boat at the city dock west of Andrews. It's a commercial boat and it exceeds 26 feet. Number 6, 2 boats. 2 boats at the floating dock. The 4 charter sign on the front one blocks you from seeing no commercial boats permitted. That didn't stop them. Number 7, 65-foot boat at the condemned dock. Number 8, waiting on charter at Esplanade Park. Number 9, pontoon boat at condemned dock at the wharf. Number 10, picking up a charter at Esplanade Park. The boat's over 53 or 55 feet, and they're getting ready to board. So these are some of the recent pictures that hopefully we can bring forward to an agenda in the future with the board's approval and get updated on what the city has done. They are taking some progress in stopping this, but I think it's worthy of us having a further understanding. So perhaps the chair would agree to agenda this, or the board?
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Yes, Andrew, what do we have to do to get this on the agenda?
I will get with Ted, and I will speak with him about the importance of this issue and placing it on the next agenda.
Okay.
Harry, I understand, I said, you know, we were on the board before the docks were put in. When the docks were put in, one of the stipulations was that there would be no commercial pickups on those docks. And I don't know why that has changed, but as far as I was concerned, that I think the restriction was 26 feet and under. And also, at one point, they had that thing that was like the Venice deal that they wanted to pick up over there, and they refused that also because they were a commercial. They wanted to pick up that one where they had like a big canoe and stuff over there, and they came before the board, and it was denied because there was to be no commercial pickups on any of those city docks.
Yeah, that's, as I mentioned, that they're exceeding the length and they're commercial, and that is against that county grant, and it could impede, future grants. The city has recently taken a step to restrict that activity there, but on the weekends, it's still going on. Without people or code on the water or whatever, I know, Andrew, perhaps you could explain, doesn't seem to be any activity on the weekends to stop it on behalf of code, or people still use it, drop off and run.
Yeah, this is an issue that the Marine Industry Association is going to be diving into, which is the New River Corridor and the use of the seawalls, the docks, because there's been a lot of issues coming up here as far as in creating the tunnel effect going down the river and how hard navigation is. But in addition, we have something this board has looked at for a long time is, where can you legally load a barge with seawall construction material to bring it to a house that needs to have its seawall raised to 5 feet, of doing it. You have to go to another city to legally do it. You're not, it's basically, where you can get away with it. And so there's obviously demand for construction of seawalls, of going on. And there's obviously demand, especially from looking at all these pictures, for people to go out in boats, and do charter boats. One of the issues with the boats that we see in some of these pictures are they're not licensed, they're not insured boats. A lot of them are, but a lot of them are not. And for now, it's just, the city turning a blind eye to what's going on. It can't go on like that. And we have the opportunity, all it takes for this is a dock, and so if there was some part of the seawalls or some part of the dockage that was defined as being, call it commercial transient dockage, where people would either, if you had one of these boats, you're a charter boat, that you pay the city to use the dock. You have permission to use the dock, and that dock should be somewhere where there's nearby parking, as well. Just identifying the right place for it. And like you said, I don't know what the number was, but there could be a lot of income for the city as far as making it legitimate for people to pay to have a have a permission to be using a certain dock for loading and unloading of their charters, of it. there's not enough docks, in the city. And so we have to figure out a way to let people, there's a demand, figure out what it is. So I think that rather than just telling people, no, you can't do it, and they're going to still sneak around and do it anyway, figure out a way to let them do it legally, and the only way really is that the city would designate certain areas or, 1, 2, 3, whatever, dock areas that would allow it to go on, and require it where they could enforce that, is your boat certified, or do you have a business license, and you have life jackets for everybody, and do you have insurance, for doing this? Whereas now it's just, someone's going to put something on Craigslist and pop into to the launching ramp and pick up people, surreptitiously, making a level playing field for all the people who are playing by the rules and are doing charters, legitimately, and might have to rent a dock in order to do their business. Make it so that they can do it rather than just tell them all go away, because they're not going to. So I agree that this is a big issue, in the city, and it's really something that the whole call it the New River Corridor, all the way from the marinas out west, into the intercoastal, really needs to be addressed. Of what is the best use of that, and how because we're constantly in here, looking at requests for variances that, we might say, we're not doing the right thing, and so I think it needs to be readdressed, and we will be pushing forward that at the Marine Industry Association as well. So thankfully you brought that up, Barry. Thank you.
Can I just suggest that in anticipation of this being placed on the next month's agenda per the chair, you come to the meeting with some ideas that can be consolidated quickly into a communication to the commission, as far as an outcome is concerned at that meeting.
Yes, very good. Any other discussion on this or anything else?
Can I talk about it for a sec? I don't know if...
Absolutely.
So, just so you get an idea of the enforcement of that, as my guys do and the park rangers do, when they go to pick up there, it's basically a violation of the park rules. And so for us to enforce that, besides like the life jackets and all that, we have to see them there picking up, and then the person who's in operation of the business, we can give them a trespass warning for the first time for a day. And then it moves on previous, subsequent length of time they could be trespass warned from that property. So it makes it difficult to do. So I give a guy 24-hour trespassing. Well, 2 days later, if he comes back, I couldn't enforce it. I could enforce it, but I can't charge him with anything. So in my opinion, I think what you're saying is great for having a place where they can do it legally, because they do it all over the city, not just in the New River. They do it at 15th Street where we're at, and George English, and everywhere. If they could, conduct an ordinance where we could charge them with violating that, instead of just banning them from violating a park rule. If they have an ordinance, they could write up an ordinance. That way it kind of forces them, because they're just going to go to even if we have a dock that's laid out for commercial use, these guys are going to go to wherever the closest dock they can get to easily from wherever they're storing their boats is at. That's where they're going to go. And we finally got a little bit of a grip on the wave runners, the jet skis, but now it's these pontoons. They have blown up. There's dozens of them with these party boats. They don't normally cause too big of a problem on the waterway like the jet skis do, but they're definitely full of people, and people are having a good time, and they want to come down here and be on the water, and I get it. I would too. But I think your idea is great, but I think if the commission, they can enact an ordinance that when you pick up there, you could be charged with violating an ordinance instead of just me trespass warning you for a day and then a week and then a month. And, it doesn't seem to go home. And also, I think would be a great idea is when they apply for the business, they say, oh, I'm a charter boat, whatever. They give them, hey, you are not allowed to pick up here. You're not allowed to pick up in the park. You're not allowed to pick. That way, at least they know going in, and they maybe don't want to. Maybe they'll go to another city where they can pick up wherever they want, or whatever it may be.
I think the thing that is to keep them in the city though, and give them a place where, you can't do this, but you can do this. There's a legal way to do what you want to do. And not just to chase them all away, because obviously we have a lot of people here that want to use them, that want to do that. So I think we need to, accommodate that. So very good. Thank you. Is there any other business?
Yeah, well, just one comment on that. With all these boats comes garbage. If you look on any, say, Sunday afternoon around the Performing Arts Center, you're going to see garbage. Same thing if you get a weekend at Cooley's Landing, at the end of a Saturday or Sunday, late, all the boats come in, there's garbage. The city does a good job on picking up the garbage, but at some point it's overwhelmed and it's just stacked. I mean, you go to the downtowner any Saturday afternoon or Sunday, garbage. Go to Third Avenue, garbage, and it's these charter boats. The regular people, no problem, or the small boats, but where do they dump their garbage? The other thing is where do they pump out, or do they pump out? I don't know, but there's some things that need to be looked at.
Thank you. So any more old, new business? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting. Adjourned.
All right,
Thank
well-
you all.
All right, there we go.